Imagine vanishing without a trace, not just getting lost, but completely disappearing, leaving behind only unanswered questions and worried hearts. Now imagine being found 8 years later, not wandering in a forest, not trapped beneath a lake, but inside a long-abandoned copper mine, its entrance sealed from within. There, leaning against the rough stone walls, are two figures, seemingly asleep but lifeless. Their legs bear fractures, evidence of a fall that no one could have survived unscathed. This is not a tale of fictional monsters. This is the harrowing real story of Emily Carter and James Whitman, an ordinary couple whose 3-day escape to the Arizona desert spiraled into an 8-year enigma, revealing a horror far beyond anyone's imagination. It all began in the summer of 2011. Emily, 27, and James, 29, were an unassuming couple from Phoenix. They weren't thrill seekers, extreme hikers, or survival experts. They were simply two people in love, craving a quiet weekend away from the chaos of the city. Their plan was straightforward: pack their aging but reliable Jeep, drive to the rugged desert landscapes of northern Arizona, set up a tent for 2 nights, capture photos of the Red Rock Canyons, and immerse themselves in the stillness of nature. The location they selected was a curious mix of beauty and danger. Situated near the remains of mid-20th century copper mines, the area was littered with rusting machinery, abandoned shafts, and roads that had long vanished from official maps. To Emily and James, it was exotic, a chance to witness something untouched and rare. They weren't seeking danger, far from it. Before leaving on a Friday morning, Emily sent a quick text to her sister. Heading out for the weekend. Back Sunday evening. Love you. That would become the final message anyone ever received from them. They packed the essentials: water, food, a tent, sleeping bags, and cameras. They carried no climbing gear, no mining tools, nothing beyond what a casual desert camper might need. Their intentions were simple: enjoy sunsets, photograph canyons, and be alone together. The weekend passed quietly. Sunday evening arrived, but Emily and James did not return. Initially, no one panicked. Perhaps they were delayed, or reception was poor in the remote desert. But when Monday came and neither appeared at work, worry morphed into alarm. Calls to their phones went straight to voicemail, and their friends confirmed that the couple had ventured to the old mine district. By midday, law enforcement had been notified, and a search operation was underway. At first, hope lingered. Police officers and volunteers combed the desert in vehicles and on foot. The terrain was merciless: sprawling canyons, jagged rock formations, and dry riverbeds stretching endlessly. The task was akin to finding a needle in a sprawling haystack. Helicopters scoured the skies, circling for hours, searching for a glint of metal, a campfire, or a tent. Yet the days slipped by with no sign. No car, no footprints, no campsite. It was as if Emily and James had vanished the moment they left the city limits. Hope waned as the desert's harshness became increasingly apparent. Daytime heat was punishing. Nighttime temperatures plunged into freezing cold, and the threat of dehydration or disorientation loomed. Authorities speculated on other scenarios. Perhaps they never reached the desert. Maybe they planned a spontaneous disappearance. But those theories unraveled quickly. Their bank accounts remained untouched, credit cards unused. Their pets had been left at home with care instructions. Anyone planning to vanish wouldn't leave behind such responsibilities. A criminal angle seemed unlikely, too. The desert area was nearly deserted. A random attack was statistically implausible. The search dragged on for a week. Volunteers refused to quit, but the official operation began to taper off as leads were non-existent. Then, on the 7th day, a breakthrough arrived unexpectedly. A helicopter pilot, scanning the sunlight-soaked landscape, noticed a faint shimmer. Closer inspection revealed flashing hazard lights, the unmistakable signal of a vehicle left abandoned. Emily and James's Jeep had been found, parked on an overgrown, half-erased track leading toward the old mine shafts. The discovery of the Jeep ignited a renewed surge of hope and urgency. It was parked eerily in the middle of the overgrown track, as though abandoned in a hurry. The hazard lights flickered weakly, the battery barely sustaining the dim glow. Everything about the vehicle suggested a sudden stop. Doors unlocked, belongings untouched, a map spread across the passenger seat beside an empty water bottle. James's phone lay forgotten in the glove compartment, its battery more than half full, with no missed calls, no desperate attempts to contact anyone. The GPS unit, however, was still active, its screen displaying a route that traced further into the heart of the desert, toward a dark, forgotten mine. This single clue rekindled determination among the searchers. They followed the barely discernible path indicated by the GPS, navigating the sun-scorched terrain. The desert was silent, except for the whispering wind that twisted through jagged rocks. The air shimmered with heat, and every step on the cracked, sun-baked ground felt heavy, as if the desert itself were resisting their approach. After several miles, they arrived at the mine's entrance, a narrow opening in the rock, littered with rusting debris and broken boards. At first glance, the mine seemed ordinary. Yet there was something unsettling about the silence. No footprints led inside, no sign of recent human activity. They called out for Emily and James, their voices swallowed by the vast emptiness. Going deeper without proper equipment would have been suicidal. Old mines are death traps, full of hidden collapses and poisonous gases. Still, the rescuers could not ignore the possibility that the missing couple had somehow ended up inside. Every stone, every shadow, seemed to whisper secrets from decades past. Years passed, and the search had grown cold, until, on a scorching autumn day in 2019, two local men scavenging for scrap metal stumbled upon the mine. They weren't detectives or thrill seekers, just ordinary people hoping to sell abandoned metal. They arrived at the entrance, only to find it strangely sealed. A thick, rusty metal sheet had been dragged over the opening, weighted with stones and beams. It looked hastily constructed, yet alarmingly secure, as if someone had gone to great lengths to hide what lay within. Curiosity and the promise of metal drove them to work for hours under the relentless sun, cutting a crawl-sized hole in the metal. As soon as the first of them shone a powerful flashlight inside, the musty, stale air hit them, a silence that had been preserved for years. The beam revealed only stone walls and dust, until, at the far end of the small chamber, 15 meters from the entrance, two forms became visible. They were sitting, backs against the wall, heads slightly bowed. At first, the men thought it was a trick of the light, perhaps mannequins or discarded materials. But the reality hit them with chilling clarity. These were humans, sitting silently, unnervingly calm. No blood, no signs of a struggle, no scattered belongings, just two people who seemed to have rested and never risen again. Shock rooted them to the spot. One whispered, barely audible, "They're alive. No, wait. No, they're dead?" The air was heavy with the unbearable weight of 8 years of unanswered questions. The men scrambled back to the road, called the authorities, and soon a team of forensic investigators arrived. Inside the mine, the scene was even more disturbing than anyone had imagined. The bodies, preserved by the dry, sealed air, were clothed in decayed hiking gear, completely intact, yet devoid of any personal effects. Emily and James had not just died, they had been trapped. The autopsy revealed multiple fractures in their legs, injuries consistent with falling from a significant height, yet their upper bodies remained untouched. Nothing suggested a struggle or attack. How could they have fallen, remained calm, and yet perished in such a calculated manner? Then investigators noticed the mine's layout. Above the place where the couple sat, a vertical shaft led from the surface, an opening possibly hidden by overgrown bushes or discarded boards. A terrifying theory emerged. Emily and James had fallen through this shaft, breaking their legs upon impact. Immobilized and helpless, they could neither move nor escape. But that only explained their injuries, not the sealed exit. Someone had welded the side entrance shut from the inside, a feat that seemed impossible without leaving equipment behind. Whoever did this vanished without a trace, leaving the couple to die slowly, trapped in darkness. Investigators moved into the mine with extreme caution. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay, oppressive in its silence. Every step echoed off the stone walls, each sound magnified, as though the mine itself were listening. Emily and James sat almost unnaturally still, their skeletal forms frozen in time, their decayed hiking clothes clinging to brittle, mummified limbs. The absence of any belongings or personal items was troubling. No backpacks, no water, no cameras, nothing. Just two bodies abandoned in a sealed tomb of stone and darkness. The autopsy revealed the full extent of their suffering. Multiple fractures ran through the shins, ankles, and feet injuries that could only have come from a vertical fall of several meters. Yet their upper bodies showed no trauma, no defensive wounds, no indication of an attack. How had they fallen, remained conscious, and yet ended up in such a calm posture, as if they were simply resting? Every detail contradicted common sense. Then, a breakthrough came from the mine structure itself. Above the side entrance that had been welded shut, a vertical shaft led from the surface, a hidden drop that could easily be obscured by natural debris. It became horrifyingly clear. Emily and James had fallen into the mine through this shaft, landing with devastating force. Immobilized and helpless, they had been unable to move, but that still left one staggering question unanswered. Who welded the exit shut, and why? Forensic analysis of the metal sheet revealed professional welding work, executed from inside the mine. Yet no welding equipment, no generator, not even simple tools were found anywhere nearby. Whoever sealed the entrance had vanished completely, leaving behind no trace of their presence. The absence of a struggle now seemed even more sinister. If an attack had occurred, the victims would have fought back. If they had simply fallen, they were already completely defenseless. Someone had found them wounded, aware of their helplessness, and chosen to imprison them alive. It was a calculated, methodical act. Someone had dragged the metal sheet to the side exit, welded it shut, and left them to die over days in darkness, hunger, and thirst. The realization sent shivers through the investigative team. This was no accident, no negligence. It was deliberate, cold-blooded cruelty. The search for the killer narrowed quickly. Only someone familiar with the mines could have known the secret vertical shaft, the hidden side entrance, and the ventilation tunnels that allowed discreet entry and exit. The perpetrator had turned the mine into a lethal trap, fully aware of how to cover their tracks. Investigators began digging into property and lease records of the old uranium mines. Most plots were abandoned or public property, but the mine where Emily and James had perished was leased to a private individual, a man in his 60s who lived alone on a remote ranch miles away. He had claimed to conduct geological research, yet neighbors described him as secretive, often hostile to anyone trespassing on his property. The police obtained a search warrant for his home and workshop. Inside, they found evidence that made the man uneasy: a bundle of keys to old mine gates, and a detailed, yellowed diagram of multiple mines, showing hidden passages, vertical shafts, and ventilation tunnels unknown even to mining authorities. One tunnel even led to the surface nearly a mile from the main entrance, the perfect escape route for someone who had welded the exit from inside. When confronted with the evidence, the man did not plead remorse. Calmly and emotionlessly, he recounted the events. He had been patrolling his land when he heard screams. Investigating, he saw two strangers had fallen into a concealed pit he had once covered to keep animals out. They were injured, but alive. In his mind, they were intruders, a problem to be removed. He returned with a welding machine and generator, sealed the side entrance, and left. In his twisted logic, he had protected his property. The slow, agonizing deaths of Emily and James were inconsequential. The trial that followed relied on a wealth of evidence. While prosecutors struggled to prove intent to kill, the man was convicted of intentional abandonment in dangerous conditions, resulting in death. He received 18 years in prison. Justice had finally named the person responsible for leaving two innocent people to perish in darkness. The story of Emily and James did not end with their disappearance, nor with the discovery of their bodies. It ended when justice confronted the calculated cruelty of a mind that valued property over human life. The news of the trial and the conviction rippled through the state like a cold wind. Families of Emily and James finally found a measure of closure, though the scars of grief remained indelible. Their parents, once hollowed out by 8 years of uncertainty, were able to bury their children with dignity, but the memory of that terrible summer weekend haunted them forever. Friends recounted the stories of the couple's disappearance at vigils and memorials, preserving the warmth and joy Emily and James had brought to their lives. Yet, the shadow of the mine remained. Locals spoke of it in hushed tones, warning travelers and adventurers to stay clear of the abandoned uranium shafts. The mine became a legend in its own right, an eerie place where curiosity and recklessness could meet fatal consequences. Even decades later, hikers would occasionally report a fleeting glimpse of light inside the tunnels, as if the mine itself remembered the tragedy and whispered secrets to those daring enough to approach. For law enforcement, the case was a stark reminder of human malevolence concealed beneath the guise of solitude and isolation. One person's paranoia had been magnified into an almost mythic horror, and only meticulous investigation, persistence, and a measure of luck had unveiled the truth. The story of Emily and James serves as both caution and testament. Nature is unforgiving, but human cruelty can be far more deliberate and sinister than the wilderness itself. Ultimately, the legacy of the case became twofold. On one hand, it was a tragic reminder of the fragility of life and the dangers of venturing into unknown terrains unprepared. On the other, it was a testament to resilience. How families, communities, and investigators refused to surrender to despair, insisting that the truth, no matter how dark, must eventually be unearthed. Though the mine now stands sealed, silent, and still, the story of Emily and James continues to echo. Their names, once lost in the desert dust, are now remembered not only for the horror of their deaths, but for the determination it took to confront injustice. Theirs is a story of love, loss, and a chilling reminder that some places hide secrets that only time and human perseverance can reveal. In the end, justice did not restore life to Emily and James. It could not erase the terror they endured in those final days, but it did expose the darkness that had festered in the heart of a single man, ensuring that the world would know the truth. And in that truth, the couple finally found the peace that had eluded them for 8 long years.